Last but not least, what metaverse future are we BUIDLing? Building? I'd like to introduce your moderator, Mr. Jovan. Robin. Hello? Oh, and we have microphones here.
They're all working?
They're all working. Just turn them on.
Hello?
Except for yours.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Is the future here? Yeah, I think the future is here, actually. So I'm very pleased to be the moderator for this evening's, is it the best? Probably panel talk of the day. It's the last one. And we have 5 very prestigious panelists and experts about metaverses who are going to delve into what future we can have in the metaverse. And I would like to introduce Michal. Sorry, what's your last name?
Michal PTÁČNÍK.
Okay, it's a bit hard. Sorry, Michal. I'll say it the English way. Michal PTÁČNÍK, JEREMIE HENICZ, HYPNO Wilder, JULIEN KELLER, and Jeff Burton. Thank you very much. Could you guys introduce yourselves briefly so that the audience knows who you are, and before we start talking about the topics of the day?
Yeah, sure. Can I suggest that the people in the back, can you come down to the front? We can just have a big circle here, because if some of the people want to join, they're not going to want to come sit on the front row or anything like that, and they always want to go to the back.
And later on, you can ask questions directly to our experts at the end of the panel talk.
All right, so I'll start, since I'm at the far end. I'm Jeff Burton. I have had a 40-year career in entertainment and technology and video games. I was a co-founder of Electronic Arts in 1982. Before I founded that company with Stanford alumni, there were 6 of us that knew each other, basically. And I was in charge of Europe and the Middle East for the home computers of Atari. So I was basically the sales guy out of Sunnyvale for Atari's home computers. And after a couple of years of that, then we got together with our business school classmates and started Electronic Arts. So I was there until we went public and did the international business development for it. Since then, I've done all sorts of different things because I could. And I've been in the hospitality industry, in the ticketing industry, in the movie industry. So, but I've always had my finger in the gaming industry, and so that's where I am refocusing, because the metaverse, well, the whole crypto world and blockchain is as transformational as the internet was in its time. And we started Electronic Arts before any of that stuff. So I find it really fascinating to be in this group, because these are the most passionate, brilliant guys that I've seen today. I mean, it's just fascinating. Anyway, you're next.
Thanks. So I'm Julien. I'm the co-founder of Society. So it's an experience-driven metaverse with the highest quality design that is technically possible today. And we are like building experiences custom-made for brands and artists. And our motto is to make society the place where creators, brands and communities can just live, create and share extraordinary moments together. So I'm really happy to be here today with those guys, and I'll let the mic.
Rock and roll. HYPNO, we're building over at Wilder World a photorealistic 5D metaverse that's powered by our own native token, the Wild token, and everything in our metaverse is an NFT. So essentially, yeah, we're building like a new dimension of reality, I like to call it, but it's pretty fun.
Nice. So I'm the founder of Crypto Guilds. It's LinkedIn of the metaverse. We connect thousands of guilds with scholars in blockchain games. Guilds are like meta companies. They're basically buying a lot of used-to-earn NFTs from all the game and metaverses, and they make scholarships, so they lend them to scholars, and scholars are kind of meta workers or meta players. and they use the NFTs to earn. So we connect all of these people into what platform? LinkedIn of the Metaverse.
I am Michael. I am the Minister of Justice of Liberland, which is a tiny country in the south of Europe, real life. And we are building a city. It's going to be city-sized, like smaller than Paris. It's going to be city-sized, 3 Monacos. But before we can do that, before the project's ready and the legislature, which I'm drafting, is ready, we are building a metaverse and a blockchain, and I'm doing the project management on the blockchain and the legal advice work on the metaverse. So that's why I'm here, to talk about our experiences on building a digital twin photorealistic metaverse. So that's it.
Great, thank you very much. I have a first question that you might deem as provocative. I'm going to ask, do we really need a metaverse?
No.
All right, let's go.
All right, so maybe, I guess, we don't really need a metaverse. The point is, for me, is that it's happening anyway. Like, it's just like, if you have usage, if you have people building it and doing stuff about it. So I guess the question is not really like, do we need? It's just like happening, and then what are you going to do about it?
I agree. It's a deep philosophical question that it doesn't really matter if I think we should have a metaverse or not, but that's where the winds are blowing. So I think what we're trying to build at Wilder World, or the kind of the source, is like, we don't want to end up in Facebook's metaverse. So we need to build something that is decentralized, is kind of like a win for all, community focused, and you know, really, really fun place to be. And so yeah, we can either end up in a Facebook dystopian future, or kind of build our own future.
Well, I'm not sure if we need a metaverse. I think the builders have to decide that by creating quality products which match with the demands of real life people. I think what we certainly do need, and what we will get, is more virtualization of our lives, because I don't want to speculate too much, but history of mankind witnesses to our tendency of trying to inhabit as mental and as least physical spaces as possible. Like, we have religious tendencies, like yearning for a heaven, yearning for a utopia, which for centuries was a place of like pure intellect to a certain degree, at least free of desires or with managed desires, where like things made mathematical sense manifestly, which isn't the case obviously here, but a utopia would be like that, would be a social world order like that. And so we have this tendency. Whether it will materialize as a metaverse, or as an augmented reality, or as something completely different, that's up to the builders if they can fascinate the customers with this particular like form of business. Now it's a big hype. We'll see 2 years from now.
Yeah, maybe I will add that we have to think first about what the customer want. And maybe I would just want to take the example of maybe a concert. There is like 90% of the people who are like taking their phones, filming the artists like performing, and maybe nobody like enjoy the concert as people enjoyed like 10 years ago. So maybe the metaverse could be the follow-up of this state of the art of concert performance. So yeah, it's up to builders to think about building the best products, but I think it's more important to think first of what people want, just first.
I agree. I would say that we don't need a metaverse, but I really want one. I mean, when we started Electronic Arts, we thought that the biggest thing we could do, the most important thing we could do, was to fuse education and entertainment. We thought that'd be a huge market, and I think we all really thought that education is the best way for the world to improve. Well, we called it edutainment. Have you heard that combined word before, edutainment? Back in 1982 we were talking about it. It hasn't really come about, but from my standpoint personally, when I first put on a headset and stepped into virtual reality, I realized, oh my God, this is absolutely fantastic. It's experiential learning. You don't forget the experiences you have in virtual reality because you really feel like you're living them. It's like when you're living your life, you're learning stuff all the time. So I think I was convinced that that's the way that people should learn everything. Well, headsets are too hot, too heavy. It's too. I don't like the headsets, but I loved the experience. So for me, a metaverse is the perfect place, and that's one of the reasons that I'm advising Learniverse, because gamifying learning can best happen, I think, in a virtual world where multiple people can interact with each other in real time, as if they were, ideally if it could be in virtual reality or with a headset, that'd be probably the best, but that's impractical. And so I think that as metaverses get formulated further, you don't have to have virtual reality. You can. You don't have to have AR either. But volumetric video is very, very effective. And I think the fact that if it's housed in what we call right now a metaverse, that's what I really want to promote, because I think that's the best way to get educated, actually.
So judging from your answers, it sounds like we might need one, or we might need a lot of them. Yeah. So I would say maybe we can go into a first question for you, direct questions. Maybe a technical question would be, what kind of metaverse do we need? We know we want a better metaverse future, but on which artistic or which reality do we have to build it? Do they have to be extremely real? Do they have to have a strong artistic point of view? What's your take on that?
I can go.
Yeah, that's to you.
Yeah, I think people have different preferences, and I think there's going to be enough room for a number of metaverses to win the day, especially in the decentralized category, kind of working together. If you want to, we always tip our hats to the OGs, Sandbox, Decentraland, even though they're pixelated and 2D, they've really paved the way, and they've had a lot of success. But we've always been I got Canadian co-founders, and they talk ice hockey euphemisms. So we're always skating to where the puck is going to be, and we feel like when mainstream hits the metaverse, photorealism and hyperrealism is actually going to win the day. People are going to want to be in experiencing something. Well, we believe. So as I said, there's plenty of preferences, but the majority of people will want to kind of be in this kind of either better than reality or close to. So yeah, we've and it's hard. We've been building since 2020, and we're just coming out of closed beta in the end of the year, early next year. So a lot of, but we haven't sacrificed on the photorealism because we know that that's the North Star for us. Yeah. But I think there's room for many, a few at least.
I will add just some personal experience too with on the issue of photorealism. When the first sports game that Electronic Arts did really was called Dr. J and Larry Bird Go One-on-One. It was a one-on-one basketball competition between two guys on the basketball court. They were famous, but the best we could do at that time was represent them as little stick figures. And the only way, Dr. J was a black basketball player and Larry Bird was white. Well, the only way we could depict that was he had an afro. And they just moved around like, stick figures do. And that was interesting because we imbued these stick figures with the characteristics statistically of the actual players, so that if you knew where Dr. J, who played underneath the basket, where he was best, you would manipulate your stick figure to that position and then shoot, and you'd have a higher percentage of making the basket. But we dreamed at that time of having having the actual characters be represented in these games, and we worked for 20 years to get photorealism, the best we could, into the sports games that we had. So FIFA football and Madden football and any of the other really sports games that we did, we made them as realistic as we possibly could to look like the real players, because that's what people wanted to deal with. They weren't so enthralled with stick figures. So I think that's the way the metaverse is gonna evolve too. When I saw, and I was disappointed about this, I hope nobody, when I saw Angry Birds the first time it came out on mobile, I thought, oh my God, we're going backwards to the, kind of ridiculous cartoon characters that I thought we'd passed up years ago. And of course, and I've never been attracted to Angry Birds, but I realized too that was a way that actually brought in millions more people into the entertainment arena, and so that was necessary. But it's no longer necessary to do that. I'm sorry, but Roblox to me is a child's game. Okay, fine. Then that's kind of neat. It brings them in, they like it. My grandchildren love watching cartoons, and the characters in the cartoons are compelling to them. But for the rest of the world, I think photorealism is the way to go. And aesthetically beautiful photorealism is ideal. Yep.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, and I think that design metaverse. I don't know if you ever wear a headset, and maybe the first time I wear it, I was a little sick afterwards because we can't break the barriers of reality when we are building a virtual world and now a metaverse, because we have all the sensations of the real world, and we have to be close as possible to have a great experience in it. So I think that photorealistic it has to be the case for most of it.
Well, I would say we are building a photorealistic metaverse, full disclosure. But I think that's one of the ways to go, and maybe the best one. However, you could also go in any way where the graphical representation has a character of its own. So you can create your own, and Decentraland is trying to do that. And for all our, in our case, we didn't want to go that way because they are not realistic enough for us. But they have their own style, or one of the others will, which will settle. Another good example is I don't know if you know that Studio Ghibli, animation with nice backgrounds and simple characters in the front. Their games look like that, at least the backgrounds do. Like the early games, the adventure games look like that a lot. And that's a style with which a lot of people grew up now. Thanks to Electronic Arts, you were kind of my childhood heroes. So, and I'm not the only one of my generation who grew up playing those games. So for us, that is photorealism of a certain childhood experience. And for the anime people, the Studio Ghibli is. So it has to be a concise concept.
I pretty much disagree, actually, because I don't think they're going to be only photorealistic metaverse. They're going to be all kind of metaverse. You're mostly speaking about VR metaverses, which are, it's convenient nowadays with the technology to make it actually photorealistic. But if you look at the whole gaming sector, which may be the closest thing we have to metaverses, it's not photorealism, which necessarily are the top games. Or you have a lot of different things. So now there's going to be room for everyone. And not only photorealistic, maybe it will win, but there will be so many different kinds.
Yeah, maybe there is room for artistic visions. I believe so, and maybe some people want to feel something they don't feel in real life, what we call now real life. So maybe they want to be in something more abstract, more artistic, following someone's vision, to be carried away from their day-to-day life. It's a possibility.
Yeah, we're gonna a lot of the partnerships that we've done with other Web3 projects as we build the culture and the community in our metaverse from the ground up. A lot of them are PFP, so cartoonish 2D. So you'll be able to express that avatar in 3D. Well, we're calling it 5D, but so there'll be an enmeshing of this kind of photorealism, kind of the city, the streetscapes, everything will be super hyper real, but you'll still be able to express your most truest freedom at a quality of Unreal Engine 5, of course, but definitely there's room for the enmeshing of the artistic and the photorealism, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Very interesting.
So like your ape, you'll be able to just like rock your ape in downtown Miami.
Yeah, that's all. That's what we all dream about, actually. Yeah. I have a further question. Maybe if metaverses are virtual world, they also bring with them new societies, and I'd like to know your view on what kind of society we can we can build, and do we need? Are we going to a dystopian future or maybe a protopian future? Or I'm using big words there, so maybe you can help me explain them to the audience.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you have a look at like any like Neil Stephenson, Snowfall, like anything in between, Ready Player One, it's very much all dystopian futures. And we like to say that we're building Ready Player One, but without the dystopian future.
So what's a dystopia?
Well, dystopian is pretty much perpetual suffering. Yeah. Protopia. Does anyone know what a protopia is? Yeah. So protopia isn't a utopia. A utopia is like a fantasy land, an unreal land where it doesn't really exist in reality. Whereas a protopia is essentially, it was coined by a guy named Kevin Cully, futurist, who it's just a perpetual increase on like in our current situation for good. Like, you know, it's like incremental, like, you know, so as a community, we can, like, better tomorrow than it is today. And that's what we like to think that we're building at Wilder World is a protopia, or we definitely, like, kind of shout it to anyone that wants to listen, because, yeah, there's no point having a really pretty photorealistic metaverse if we're living in this dystopian future. And, you know, and as we look around the world currently, there's a lot that could potentially lead us in that direction. But I know that you've got a different opinion, so maybe you jump in.
Yeah, I don't believe in protopia at all. I think everything is subjective. Basically, if you think something is good, somebody else will think it's evil. Doesn't matter. The world is gray, no black, no white. So it's very difficult. It's just like maybe it will be good for your community, and then people will be happy in their protopia because it will be community based. All right, maybe, but otherwise, it's just recreating kind of what already exists in a different way. Just like you gather with people that are the same community as you, and you will see things differently. I can give you an example in the GameFi industry, which is mostly what I know, with the old guild and scholarship ecosystem, where you actually buy assets, buy NFTs from the games, and you lend them to scholars, which are people that cannot afford them in the first place. So you tell them, I'm gonna give you my character from this game, you play with it, you will generate token, and we're gonna do 50-50 or 70-30. And a lot of people have put a lot of criticism saying, okay, because the scholars are coming from countries with low income. So they're saying, okay, you're just recreating a kind of exploitation of people with completely useless things to do.
So a scholar would be a worker.
A scholar is kind of a player or a work, because the games are not so fun. So they're just like spending their time clicking buttons, playing, try to make some money. And this is kind of a problem. But on the other side, a lot of people from this community, they say that it actually changed their life because they were able to make money. They did these choices themselves. It empowered them, and that's completely changed everything. So, you know, one way you say, okay, it's exploitation because you benefit from it, but in another way, it actually helps. So again, I'm just saying that it's not protopia, dystopia, utopia. It's just the way the world is. It just evolves, and then people see their interest, the usage, and you cannot really. I mean, you can create new usage, but then it's what people will do, and you cannot control.
What's your view on that, Michael?
Well, I'm generally optimistic. I think that the less physical world is very conducive to ideas, idealism, and protopia. Also, I believe that the past utopias, which failed, mostly failed because they offered something which they couldn't accomplish. Like, for example, a planned economy in 1920s is a nonsense. You just don't have computers. You can't do it. Some would say you can't do it ever. Like that was Ludwig von Mises. Hayek thought you can't do it without technologies. In any case, you couldn't do it without technologies, and so it ended up with bloodshed. You are removing that problem from the metaverses because you're not so physical. So you can test new ways of governance without the costs of failing. Whereas if you're doing it here in this world, we know the costs of failing, and this generation has become very adverse to testing it. That's why we're living in systems which are 20 at best, 50, 70 years old at worst, and nobody has the fire in their heart now to really like to take down the elites, to like make a new system. Like, you don't see that as a world movement. When my parents were young, if they would be living here, that would be the case. That would have been the case. The students really wanted a new system. Yeah, it was communism. It was not the best possible alternative. But like, they really would, if you ask them, they would say, yes, I'm willing to do it. In real life, I'm actually kind of putting my hopes and dreams into this, and I believe this is going to be our future, like communism in many students of the 60s, right? Again, that's probably a very bad idea, but it is an idea. And now we're more following that what is, because we're so afraid, and the metaverse ends that physical fear, which we have learned that we shouldn't experiment that much, otherwise there's going to be seas of blood. There's going to be seas of virtual blood, maybe, lack of pixels, but or NFTs. Some people are going to lose money, that's true, but it's different than masturbation. So it opens a laboratory, and that laboratory, the results of that, can then be transported into the real world. That's what works after many, many iterations. So in that way, progress and conservative mindset are united, and you create something third, something better, where you actually test by use your ideas in the virtual world. It's a bit like science, but even better, because you can do it again and again and again and again, and then you create the best solution. So I'm quite pro-utopian in that sense, I guess.
Yeah, I just look at like what we're building as like a blank canvas to model like the societal constructs that are currently upside down, that are so entrenched in our society today with this like win-lose capitalist model. Like, it's like, you know, through decentralization, through DAOs, through what we're doing, it's, you know, it's not just all about NFTs and cool things to do in like the metaverse, like racing around your wilder wheels, or, you know, that it's actually about how do we actually look at our community as citizens, not as users? How do we create value? How do we like actually shared value across whoever shows up, whoever does the work, whoever, you know, if it's the artists, if it's like just, you know, token holders, whatever, making sure that, you know, we don't have to live in this kind of win-lose model like that we're being kind of, I think, trapped in. And like this, what I love about the metaverse is, again, it's this blank canvas to really model, you know, these systems that have been entrenched, and there's so much vested interest. That's why you don't see anyone it gets squashed now these days. Everything, like any kind of like, you know, we're in Paris, yeah, like the Viva la Revolution, yeah, like it's like if anywhere it holds that spirit, it's here.
So we've touched the political ideals that we can maybe bring to our metaverse futures. There, I think, is a following to this, which is how do we build societies considering new economies that may be replicating what happens in the real world, or that may be new economies, new ways to organize economies. Is this something that you consider when building metaverses? I think it's an important question.
I do too, but if I was thinking just now, for the first time in dealing with metaverse talk and that kind of stuff, I heard here something that I hadn't really considered before, and that was the pornoverse. So I'm wondering, what's the industry going to do? What are people going to do? Because I guess that's a real possibility, a real.
You're knocking him off his chair.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean to do that, but still, it occurs to me, what, you know, how are people going to react to that? Because in reality, I don't remember if you all are too young to remember the war between Betamax, the beta standard for V8
Videotapes.
Videotapes, thank you, and VHS, yeah. And you know, VHS won completely became the standard. Why? Because of pornography. And beta, the Sony would not allow beta tapes to be made or sold with pornography on them, and VHS didn't care, and they won the war because of that. So it's interesting to think of that analogy. What's going to happen? How's the industry going to react to a pornoverse? Well, I don't know.
Well, everyone's kind of gone to the pub, so Jeff's trying to spice it up for everyone that's still left here. Some controversial questions here. I like it. I don't have the answer for that, but it's definitely something that I think you said there was someone here doing that T18 or something. But coming back to your original question around new economies, so I can speak for Wilder World, how we're creating our world. Essentially everything that we're building, all of our NFT drops, our whole metaverse market is based around industries and like utility of assets in the metaverse. So we've dropped like wheels, which is like our automotive. We've dropped cribs, which is our real estate. We've dropped kicks, which is our fashion industry. We did crafts, which is our aviation. So all of these are DAOs as well. All the industries will be their own DAOs. And what we're really excited about, so we've had to kind of do the IRL industries first because people just don't really understand what we're building. But like what's really fun around the table when we're like discussing stuff is all the future industries that don't exist currently, that are going to exist in the metaverse, that like they just don't exist. So that's super fun. But I honestly feel like, instead of like Web 2 where it was like data, like everything was about like scraping our data, using our data to sell things, digital assets or industries, these asset industries are going to create value for their holders, for people who are involved in these communities, people that are involved in these DAOs, more so. And that's the kind of the Web3 kind of promise, I guess, community built, community led. Jeremy.
Yeah, sure. So I see what you're doing, and we're following that very closely. We're following all metaverses, all play-to-earn games, all kind of games to understand what the economy is going to look like, because we're trying to understand the future of work and how it will happen. And basically, all these economies revolve around NFTs, so digital ownership. As there's another key essential point, which is decentralized identity. So you need to mix decentralized identity and digital ownership, and then you need to basically give value to these used to earn NFTs, and then you'll be able to have kind of new economies, new use cases, etc., etc. Our thesis actually is that a lot of value, like right now, all play-to-earn games are terrible in value and everything crash down. But our thesis is that you will actually use your own data, your usage to monetize. What do I mean by that? When you are on Facebook or Google, you click on an ad and you give $1 to Google or Facebook. At the end of the day, all these play-to-earn games and metaverses are going to have unit economics where you will receive back all this money that advertisers are going to pay. They're going to use a token, farming token, burn it, and you will receive these incentives. You'll be able to sell the token you farm by doing tasks to advertisers that will advertise it back to you. So by using these NFTs, you will actually gain this money back. So that's a first point. And then the second point is basically how you own assets in different metaverses or play-to-earn games. You can do two things with them. It's an asset that can generate value. So you want to optimize the value it can generate. So either you play with it, you use it, or you're going to lend it to the most performing people that will generate value with it. So the key element is going to be lending NFTs, because the whole metaverses and world is going to be NFTs. So lend your NFTs the most optimized ways, and then to the most performant players or most performant users. And it's kind of good and bad, but blockchain gives us a lot of data. So you can track everything that's happening in terms of transactions, in terms of how much people are earning. It's available for all. You know what they're earning with this kind of NFTs, so you know how optimized they are and performant they are. So at the end of the day, this will be, in my opinion, a way that the whole metaverse NFT world economy will revolve around lending NFTs to performant users and investors or buyers buying NFTs and lending them. And this is actually what we're helping to do, trying to bring ethics into it, but this is where the market is going.
I think the key word is make a bigger pie. that's the key word to any fairer system. Like, if you feel that you have a big pie, that you don't have to worry about the basic system, it's like basic psychology, right? Your needs suddenly become like the higher needs, like ecology, social justice, or whatever your higher needs tend to be. Whereas if you are fear-based, then you have no security, or like a precariat, they call it. You know, you're working sometimes, but it's not. It's enough, but just enough, and you don't know how you're managing. Then what you are going to ask for is somebody to take care of you in one way or another, and then that's the difference between the utopia and the dystopia. So basically, we are facing a challenge. Like, it's not completely subjective. You cannot, even if you have a metaverse, you cannot escape the fact that a bigger pie generates happier and more moral humans. I think that's a fact of nature, a localized fact, because we are on this earth which works in a certain way. It wouldn't be that way if we were some kind of aliens which would work in a radically different, albeit a physical world. And it will maybe stop being that case when we're in a metaverse, but locally, we're living in a local bubble of a universe where this seems to be the case. So that is how we should orient our metaverse and real life economies. And we're kind of not doing that. Like, there are protopian, trying to be protopian systems which are actually advocating de-development for one or the other reasons. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, like, what? You want your children to live in poverty? No, you don't want to actually have children. Okay, fine. You want yourself to live in poverty. You want your neighbors to live in poverty. And you want the social games to be about whether I'm going to eat, therefore, whether it's worth enough for me to kill you for $5. Like, that, I think, is something concrete about the world which applies now and which will apply in the metaverse in the near future, coming to you.
Very interesting points being made there. And I think the economic question brings us to the value question. You've mentioned it a little bit, Jeremy. How do we make sure, or how do we make sure how value can be created, can be shared, maybe captured between the metaverse, one metaverse who's using maybe a currency, who's using tokens, between the community. So how tokenization can help create value, share value between communities, between entrepreneurs, metaverses. Is that a question that troubles you, that that you think is important for the future of metaverses?
Yeah, maybe I can think I can talk about like the B2B aspect of the tokenomics, what I like building right now with society, and so I really think that metaverse will be like the next e-commerce. So we are like revolutioning the whole e-commerce system, and first of all, there will be like the 3D VR aspects of the metaverse. So metaverse will bring like more immersion to people, to communities, because Web3 is all about like communities. So bring more emotion, but also more knowledge, because they are all like 3D assets, especially when we are talking about like high photorealistic metaverse. And the second part will be like will rely on the blockchains, so NFTs, and NFTs for brands is like the El Dorado, because it will like enhance the consumer journey, because brands could like follow all the path of a client through all the NFTs, could bring more value to the consumer through that. And the second one will be like the authenticity of the digital assets and all the physical assets also, because we can link all the virtual and the real world with NFTs. So I think the economy of the blockchain combined with the metaverse will be like a real add-on on the e-commerce today.
Yeah, I think I agree obviously with that, but also from a citizens of like wilder world perspective, kind of creating value. As I said, like I think through DAOs, again, we're very long on DAOs. I know there might be some differing opinions here, but decentralization as the future of human coordination, like we've been building technology around that since 2015, and that's what we built Wilder World on. And what that showcases is that anyone who shows up, anyone who participates, gets to share in the value of what's created through the DAO. Like now, DAOs still have a long way to go before they're fully decentralized. It's almost like we need DAOs for DAOs at the moment, but we're going to get there. I honestly feel DAOs would do to Silicon Valley what Silicon Valley did to Wall Street in terms of how we coordinate. And we're already seeing that because we had the head of 3D at Nike quit Nike and come run our cyberware division. Just dropped our last Metaverse Kicks campaign. We've had these architects from Zaha Hadid leave like really high-paying jobs there to come and work and design all of our architecture, because they're not only like all the value being created in those kind of organizations like a Nike gets created down the bottom, or majority of it, and it just gets sucked out the top. Whereas, you know, this head of 3D at Nike, Chad Knight, his name is, comes to Wilder World, owns all of his IP, you know, shares in like the drop mechanics, the revenue, and he's like, you know, just artists can just make so much money right now that they're meant to earn, that they should be earning, getting rid of the middleman, those types of things. So we feel like that the value creation and like all of our reward mechanisms, like we're about to drop our land sale shortly, like all the people who have bought and supported and been part of Wilder World will all get rewarded with land and these types of things. So creating that value through the digital asset or digital asset ownership, and our assets have actually in the bear market even gone up, like our floor prices on all of our like wheels, our kicks and stuff. So we're bucking that trend. So even in this kind of current climate, the floor price, like people are still making money from our assets, which is really great to see. Yeah.
Shout out to Zaha Hadid Architects. They're also doing our metaverse.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Zaha Hadid isn't doing it per se, but some of their architects left to come work for us. Yeah.
But like the company still exists.
So we've touched upon different topics of what the future of our metaverses could be. We've talked about politics, about ideals, maybe about philosophies. We've talked about economics. We've talked about how entrepreneurs, how brands can take advantage of metaverses. We've talked about how the economical structures can, we hope so, differ from what we live in the current life. So maybe less monopolies, less oligopolies. One topic we haven't talked about is education. Is it possible to create a new society where we have political ideas and standards, philosophical ideas, living economics, interaction between citizens, and without education?
Okay, so yeah, the Learniverse.
So what's the Learniverse?
Yeah, I consider to be the first step in trying to accomplish that. Now, the Learniverse will focus on training and having people be able to learn about the crypto world and Web3 and blockchain and all of that, but which is a really necessary step in getting a much broader swath of people in the world focusing on these things and being able to accomplish things in that area, which is really badly needed. But the future of that is, I think, is the fact that as communities, people will all over the world be able to create their own learning styles and much broader than just the crypto world, and the economics of it are super important, because right now the major universities basically have a monopoly over the cost involved in obtaining an education, and I just think it's delightful that the things have come together, crypto world and blockchain and everything else, to allow people to own and to be able to be actually compensated and remunerated for learning things, for improving themselves. And that's kind of at the base of what the Learniverse does. It rewards people for spending the time learning things that will help them improve their lives. And so I think that's just a fantastic thing that hadn't been possible before if we didn't have the technology we have today.
So education is truly an essential tool to build a proper society.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we've almost built our own country there. We have economics, politics, education. Maybe what we lack is an army. And when I say army, I mean not someone to fight wars, not a destructive one, but maybe our armies can be communities, building worlds, building bridges between worlds, between metaverses. How can we do that for a better metaverse future?
You should go check out Learniverse's stall. They're just over there, and the crew are all down the back there. They're good peeps. I just want to add something onto the education element, which is really important as well. We did a partnership with Ledger, which is a good Paris headquartered company, and our play and earn, not play to learn, I got that from the last chat, was around like security and how, like, because we've got like 250 million wallets kind of currently. Yeah? It's like 97 internet. We're still so early in this process. So education as well around like, just how to create the wallet and do these types of things is like has really been important for us onboarding new people into Wild World. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, but it links to the community question. Education serves maybe communities, and to create stronger communities, maybe more focused on things, or moving forward.
Yeah. What was the actual question that you asked before though? Was it about how we kind of build together, like interoperability, how we bring communities together to create like an army of sort? Was that
how do we make communities advocates, maybe?
Yeah. So one of the things that we've done in our world is we haven't opened up our land sales for brands and whales. We've actually gone out and done partnerships with everyone that aligns to us culturally and spiritually, so building from the ground up. So a lot of them are like mainly Web3 projects. We're starting to look at cultural icons now, so music, sport, these types of things, and some brands that resonate with our aesthetic and the wildest kind of spirit, like I said. So, but our aim is to be, we don't want to be the metaverse. We want to be like an intersection in the metaverse where you can go into Illuvium's tower and you're going to be able to portal into their world and you can take your assets into that. We're not there yet from a technical perspective in terms of the interoperability, but we've got some of the smartest tech brains going around our table, like, and I'm pretty biased on that, but we're going to solve for that, and that's definitely the narrative. And so bringing in all these different people, Learniverse into Wilder World, like, again, like you can kind of come in, hang out in Miami and go into their HQ or their clubhouse and have some fun, but then portal into their world. So I think open metaverse interoperability is definitely like at the heart of everything that we're building.
Thank you. A few more thoughts before our audience asks a few questions. Jeff, Julian,
yeah, you
Jeremy,
raised like some kind of like interoperability, and I think that we are like now at only the beginning of interoperability, because when we see like Sandbox is more like a Minecraft style game, and if we think about like Society or Wilder World, it's more like a high realistic ones. So it would be like hard for builders to build like bridge. To actually like live in the whole bunch of metaverses that exist like today. So I'm hoping that there will be like a lot of new tools for builders to like build some some bridge to it. So we are like doing this.
Yes, interoperability is really a question for the future. Maybe a question we can solve in next year's edition of the Metaverse Summit. We can try to solve. We can go one step forward toward this future. So thank you very much to our panelists. Now it's time for our audience to ask a few questions.
No, great panel. My only question is, as we're going up the scale, Web 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, et cetera, I still feel like larger and larger swaths of society are left behind. So currently, right now, everything you've talked about, everybody over the age of 50 would be cut off. Huge swaths of the planet can't afford a VR, can't afford the latest game. Bandwidth is a big issue for them. So are we just going to kind of create an Elysium-like, utopia world, whatever that's going to be? And from your point of view as a government, aren't you supposed to deal with all avenues of society? You can't leave one person behind because he can't afford whatever I've just explained. So I do feel like we kind of are running way fast before the rest of the world is ready to embrace.
I think that in the beginning, if you have an unregulated space where like you don't have a very strong regulation on par with communism, it will always be that the innovation radiates from certain centers which have lower entropy than the others. And that's not to say that the others are worse morally or something. I would have actually quite radical ideas about that to share, but like in short, they aren't. It's just that they happened to be in a very unfortunate place. And we happen to be in a very fortunate place, and so it's incumbent upon us to create that bigger pie, to start creating, to step forward, to create that motion which will, in time, reach to the rest of the world. And even the 50-plussers, some of them are very handy with internet. Even like 90-plusser grandmas, there are some who play online games. Like it's not like a huge swaths of the demographics, obviously, but it's possible. And so later on, when this technology advances, when it becomes cheaper to buy a VR set, blah, blah, you'll get that in India or in Africa. And frankly, now the people in the poorest parts of those places, it's not so bad anymore, but it's bad. They care about survival rather than about gaming. But who amongst you would like to live on a planet which would be governed in a way where people would not have those huge differences? Who would be willing to pay the price, which would be obvious the world government? People don't want that. And I'm not saying if it's bad or good. I'm saying if you ask the person next to you, chances are they'll say they don't want that. I'm quite surprised, actually. Young people in the 60s did want that. Now we don't. Like, people don't. It's a reaction maybe to the boomer dream, because this was the boomer dream, So, yeah, that's a few thoughts about it. So as a government, like Liberland, we're going to okay, we're first serving those who can afford it. Yeah, because we're a small country. We can't do otherwise. We don't have the global structure which would nivelize everything. And people don't want it.
Yeah, I'll just add that, thanks, Minister, that it's a real problem. Like, it really is. Technology is just the exponential growth and pace. Sometimes I'm find myself just going, what are we talking about? What is this? Or I need to set up my Metaverse so I can trade my wild, just get some ETH to trade wild, to then, all these types of things that are so, just crazy for anyone who's not computer literate. So I think the narrative there is that we are still so early. So it's about creating the platform and the foundations, and then everything else will catch up. If you look at Facebook have had a fifth of their workforce focusing on the metaverse 5 years ago, and they bought Oculus 10 years ago. So all of that's going to become mainstream very soon. Apple drops the headset. We have the iPhone and Web 2 moment with Web 3 and the headset, and we're off to the races. And obviously that's what we're building for, those moments. So right now, we're just still so early. But the other thing that Jeremy and like that kind of project is doing is, if you look at like an Axie Infinity, like probably not the best example with what's happened to them recently, but before that, like in terms of access, like there were people in the Philippines that were earning more than minimum wage playing games. Like instead of going out to the fields or back-breaking kind of work or cleaning, you know, Westerners like houses, they were able to just like, you know, say, well, no, stuff you. I'm gonna like earn minimum wage playing Axie Infinity through the guild kind of mechanism. So there are like, there's always shadow and like dark shadow, golden shadow in anything, and I think this is the great experiment that we're all kind of fumbling our way through at the moment. But
Any further question? Derek, maybe.
Thank you. Thank you. Amazing talk so far. I come from an architect's point of view, not Zaha, but slightly different. And for key thing for us for what we're creating in terms of entertainment, sports, venue environments, and that's something we may not have touched on, is more user interaction with each other. And this is a key thing I think that the metaverse is something to understand in terms of connected with people, but also crowds as well, feeling you're out in like a crowded environment. My question for you is, and this is more of a general question. One of them is, how far off do you think we are from having thousands of people being in the same space? Because right now there are limits of 40 people to a room. And then the other question on top of that is, should there be a limit in the future? If we are able to have thousands, millions of people occupying the same land, should there be a limit to sort of calm things down? And like, will the metaverse only succeed if there is a limit and not an overcrowding in a sense of people?
I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I can answer that from our perspective, because we obviously we're deep in this at the moment. So I think, I don't know if you saw Bored Apes, the other side, they did some testing the other day and it was like chaos. Yeah, it was like these humans jumping around, like everyone bumping into each other. It was like, whoa, if this is what the metaverse is going to be like, I don't want it, no way. But it is like, it's an interesting place. I think definitely from where we're at, we've built the capacity, like we've gone deep into tech though. So we've got like photorealism, like we've sold, like we're building on Ethereum, Unreal Engine 5 and our sister company, Zero.tech. So we can only kind of really, right now, like we could probably do micro experiences from like 100 to 1,000 people. Now that's going to change very quickly, very soon when we do land and everything like that. But right now, that's all we can offer. And it's like, is it even worth it? You know, doing it? We may as well just keep building, and not waste any energy. So, but like everything that we're building, like in Miami, which is our first release city, which we did a partnership with Miami and the mayor of Miami, is like civic buildings, stadiums, all that. We're designing it totally to have the crowds in there, yeah. Like and at least, if not like, you know, hundreds of thousands of people or 1 million people. Our CMO's on the record saying he wants 1 million people day one, yeah? That's why we've gone out and done all these Web3 partnerships, because they have communities, they have people that understand it, they've got Discords, they've got token holders, NFTs. So there's no point having a really beautiful metaverse and you open it up and no one's there and there's nothing to do. So we feel like it's not that far away from actually having those experiences. The actual hardest part for us, actually, and I'd like to know what these guys are, but is the avatar experience at that kind of level, like how, you know, like actually how we solve for that. But other than that, like the actual space, like time is a deflationary mechanism in Wilder World, so you'll have to like you won't be able to just portal from different places. So you'll actually, to get from one end of Miami to the other is like going from one end of Miami to the other. It's going to take you time. So location and like, you know, real estate, all these type of things are going to be important. So we're trying to make it as real as possible, but also some kind of like new dimension kind of stuff as well, fantasy and artistic creation. But it's a big one. It's a big one to solve. But I don't think it's that far off. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I've seen in 2021, one of the people we are dealing with, I've seen them having events for 5,000 plus people. So we're there. Like technologically, we're there. It's just it's not being deployed because mostly it's not needed. We could have been that. We didn't need it. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we could think about the environment as well, because we can, if we reach a limit like maybe of 10,000, because now mainly we use like a lot of servers, a lot of it's high cost as well because it's a really consuming in terms of energy. So maybe the environment will be like the solution of the answer of the question of how many people we can gather in one space. So I think we should maybe think about it a bit and not like push the barriers of reality too far and destruct the real world to build the new one, you know.
On that point, I think the advances in microtransistors and microchips are really going very fast. Will go very fast in the next few years. So the actually amount of energy you use to compute complex world will diminish. So it will allow for to create world with thousands, maybe millions of people with actually very low energy consumption. So it's a problem we have now. We might not have 5 years, 10 years, 15 years from now.
I would say quantum computing is going to have a big impact on that too. And I don't know when we will start seeing the proliferation of quantum computers, but I don't think it's any more than 20 years away, maybe less. The other thing is AI and AGI. They're on development cycles that are sometimes frightening to me, but they'll have a major impact on this too, including, you know, things like being able to communicate. You were talking about communicating with avatars, among avatars. Somebody mentioned that. But anyway, I think that those are two major technologies that are, you know, probably 20 years. I would say 20 years, given the fact that we started electronic arts 40 years ago, and it's taken 40 years to get to this point. And we would have been so delighted if we'd had the tools today that exist 40 years ago, but we just didn't. So.
Yeah, I was going to say we call it going quantum. I think that's going to be the driver, and I think it's going to be sooner rather than later.
More like 5 years or like 2 years more. Yeah, and AGI, that's a very complex term, but like something which you could call AGI, and it wouldn't be like super intelligent, but it would be kind of universal. I'd also think more 5 years than 20.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So that's a very good prospect for the future, right?
I'm very optimistic about AGI.
Yeah,
I think we're going to merge with it. Like we're going to auto-align it because the Neuralink and stuff, and we're like going to have an extra brain, and all people are going to be equally intelligent because it will be able to outsource the boring operations to that thing, right? And so it will be auto-aligned. It will be a different world. But I'm looking forward, and I hope I'll live to see that world. It will be, I think, a better world.
5 years? I mean, we could have Trump as president again in 5 years.
Yep.
Let's not talk about politics.
Do we have a few more questions in the audience? I see Derek there and Mr. over there and the gentleman over there.
Thank you. I just got one question, because we talk about the society, community in general. What's their attitude? What's their approach to Metaverse? Of course, the adoption is progresses very quick and very fast. We know that. But the question is, what's the opinion on, like, from your point of view? I mean, like from the big names. Sorry, Jeff, I will be directing the question to you. So when you've got like EA, because it seems that you are very enthusiastic. Yeah. Like all about the Metaverse stuff, but what about like the big brands? Because you've got new projects, the pie is only one, and you need to share it amongst the others. What's the approach then, like with the Metaverse adoption? Is it not like competitors then anymore?
Well, so one of the things about I would say about electronic arts is it has reached the point where it has no mission anymore, no vision anymore. It's a large enough corporation, it's publicly held, and so the CEO and chairman of it is dedicated his entire existence to improving stockholder value. And that just, and in this case, that means that he's probably going to find a merger partner like Apple or Disney, like they've already talked about that, just because that's the way to raise the stockholder value. has nothing to do with anything about metaverse or anything like that. So, or any future, really any future.
So it's like we don't want to stay behind, basically, because it progresses. So like big brands needs to follow the trend. Is it right?
Big
brands. I mean,
big brands.
Yeah.
Well, big brands had better figure out what the future is going to hold, and it's not just making your company more valuable. It's what's this social world going to, and the virtual world. How is that going to impact their existences? And you know, companies like Electronic Arts, I'm afraid, are passé now.
Right. Thank you. Cheers.
All right, maybe one last question.
I think just to add to that before, I think there's a lot of brands that are doing it really right, like GameStop, if you saw what they did like last week, they just crushed it. So that's a really good example of old coming into the new. Like everything that they've done has just been, if you look at it from when they announced to like when they dropped last week, it's been really impressive. Like they're the types of people that we want a partnership with, and like deep in conversations with around like bringing those brands along. I think also your question around like how does it all come together? I think the decentralized metaverses need to all kind of band together so we don't have like a Fortnite. Like if you look at Fortnite, yeah, like the reason that they don't do NFTs at the moment is because their whole model is based around people not owning the actual assets or being able to like fully be in their own sovereignty of them. So if I log out of Fortnite, I lose, or not me because I don't play it, but if I look at my nephews who are, so like I can't even imagine how much money my sisters spent on that game. Like as soon as you log out, you lose all those assets. You lose them all. So like why would they want to create something or be in something at the moment? They're going to have to at some stage, but that's why they're dragging their feet at the moment. Even like an EA would be the same boat, I would say. So it's an interesting space, It's like it's an experiment. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for attending this very passionate panel about the future of the metaverses and the metaverses we can build in the coming month, in the coming years. So I really hope you had a great day at the Metaverse Summit first day. It's the first edition in Paris. Tomorrow we have another great set of panels. We have great entrepreneurs, startups, companies here, so please do come back tomorrow. And for those who have a VIP tickets, I see you tonight in a non-disclosed location.